Hey everyone, it's Jessie from Inkarella Cards, here today to show you a faux pointed pen calligraphy technique. For those of you who aren't familiar with pointed pen or are on the fence about starting, this is a good way to get your feet wet and explore that creative side of you. But I'd also like to say that if you're on the fence about pointed pen, I think you should just try it. It's a fairly inexpensive hobby to pick up and it's also really rewarding. If you're a pointed pen user, this is still a good technique to use if you don't have your tools. Say you happen to be traveling and you wanted to sketch something out to see what it might look like. This is a good replacement for a pointed pen nib. So I'm going to start with the basics, and at the end of the video I'll have a tutorial on how to use this technique with watercolor pencils for a gradient effect. The materials list is actually pretty short today, as all I'm using is my favorite pen to use for Muji and my dotted Muji notebook paper, which is actually what I use for pointed pen calligraphy drills. I'm actually going to start off with a pointed pen just so that we have a model to work off of. Here I'm using the Browse Rose nib with the Higgins Eternal Black ink. I chose a letter at random, but I think that L was a good choice because it showcases the upstroke and downstroke and it doesn't have too much else going on. I'm going to take a different colored pen and write down some notes so that I can keep those things in mind when I copy this model. The upstroke, or what is sometimes referred to as the hairline, is thin as the nib is constricted and there's less ink flowing through. The downstroke is what refers to the heavy pressure that is placed on the nib as it's being dragged down the paper. The downstroke is thicker because the pressure on the nib allows for the nib to expand and make way for more ink to flow through. So here's our model. Now I'm going to take my pen and replicate the letter. The upstroke and downstroke look the same now, so I'm going to have to go in and make the downstroke thicker. I'm also going to color that in so that it looks like the model. You can kind of tell that the faux calligraphy created by my pen didn't quite capture that rounded look of my original L. But if you wanted to be more meticulous, try drawing this out with a pencil and then you could go over it with a pen later on. Now I'm going back to note that my faux version of the letter has got the important parts from the original, which is that the upstroke is thinner and that the downstroke is thicker. Since we've gotten the general principle down with our one letter, I'm going to go ahead and try this with a phrase. Now there's a range of nibs that you'll find that differ in feel and flexibility. I'm going to simplify that and call them firm and flexible nibs. Firm nibs tend to be easier to start with when you're first learning because they give you a little more control. They also don't allow for much range on the downstroke, making it appear thinner. Flexible nibs are what it sounds like and allows the nib to expand more on the downstroke, making it appear thicker. The first word will represent what writing with a flexible nib might look like, and calligraphy, the second word, will represent what writing with a firm nib might look like. So I'm going to color this in so that you can see what the final result is. Now that I've colored the words in, you can really see how the different styles look. And I made a mistake on the Y, which happens more often than I'd like to admit. So now I'm going to show you how you can use this technique with different materials. In this case, I'm going to be using watercolor pencils. Here I have Inktense watercolor pencils, and this is a range of 24 colors. You can see there's a lot. I also have watercolor paper from Aquash Bee Paper. I have a cup of water, and yes, that is a detergent cup. And I also have a really thin liner brush, which is really important for this particular technique. I'll have a link to all the products that I used today in the video description below. So I'm going to start with two different shades of a similar color, although you don't have to. Here I picked 3 different colored pencils because I wasn't sure which ones that I wanted to use at this point, but I decided to go with the fuchsia and the violet colors in this set. I take the lighter shade, fuchsia in this case, and wrote out hello in my faux calligraphy writing. Next, I'm going to take my violet color and add that to the bottom of that thickened line, which is going to create that really cool gradient effect that I mentioned earlier. The last step is to wet that watercolor brush and start to work that into what you've written to activate the colors that are on the paper. Make sure to go over all the parts of the word to smooth everything out and to make sure that the colors are blended. So here is the completed look. As you can tell, I didn't go over it too carefully, but if you wanted to, you could add more of the lighter shade in there, and you could transfer some of that color directly from the watercolor pencil onto the brush to add that color. I used this faux calligraphy technique with a pen and with ink pencils today, but you could definitely use this technique with such a huge range of tools, from different types of markers to pencils, and you could even use it with different types of paper. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you learned something. Let me know what you think in the comments below and also what you'd like to see next. You can follow me on Instagram at InkGorillaCards and check out my website at www.inkgorilla.com. Thanks for watching!